Family law is about people, not paperwork. Trusted by thousands of UK firms, Leap's legal software gives family lawyers a single, fully integrated platform to scale your practice, stay compliant, and deliver better client outcomes. Learn more at leap.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Family Lawyer podcast. Today I welcome Sonya Black onto the discussion. We were just talking before we started, Sonya. You're going to describe yourself as a coach, but what you do is much more nuanced than that. And we're going to explore a little bit about your work and what you do. You run a business called CBT in Partnership. And the context of today's discussion, we were introduced a little while ago. The context of today's discussion is how to support both individuals and family lawyers through that divorce process and the role that people like you can play in supporting both the family lawyer and the individual going through it. So thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me and having me here.
Well, I hope I've done you a bit of justice in the introduction, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, Sonya, because that will probably help to inform your work a little bit.
I work at the moment as a divorce coach, trauma-informed divorce coaching, but I've been a psychotherapist for the last 20 or so years, mainly working in the private sector, but I've worked across the sectors. Trauma is my specialist area. So I've worked with so many people over the years who have been going through divorces, relationship breakdowns, led me to train as a family mediator. I've worked as a clinical lead in a trauma team, and all of those things have led me into this approach towards people and with a coaching focus, but very much a trauma-informed focus to take the trauma, to take the pain out of it.
We've heard this phrase trauma-informed quite a bit, probably over the last 6-12 months, and we've talked about it a little bit on the podcast previously, but just give us your kind of, I mean, perhaps not dictionary definition, but give us your definition of what trauma-informed means and you know, in your own context, what does it mean for you?
Yeah, so in caring professions, we have the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And what we're aiming for is that any interventions that we're using are not causing further harm and damage to a person, but also being really mindful and aware of the history of a person, previous experiences of a person, but also things that may be currently triggering. So within trauma, very often a person will describe it as it's happening to me. I'm powerless within this. I don't have control. I don't have autonomy, and I'm not able to do anything about this. So the trauma-informed principles then bring it into the idea of being able to say, right, okay, this is empowering, that you're able to have a sense of safety within this process, psychological safety, emotional safety, that you're able to feel that you can trust the people around you, that you've got choice, that there's true collaboration and working together as a team, and any cultural considerations are brought into factor as well. So within that divorce coaching, then it's being able to bring all of those things into the divorce process, so that divorce itself, the relationship, the end of the relationship, divorce as a transition point in life rather than actually itself being traumatic. And, you know, I think within divorce, it's always worth remembering when there are children involved in particular that we're creating our children's memories. How do we want it to be for them? How do we also think about that link of intergenerational trauma, the various ACEs that come in, and how do we protect all people who might be involved in that process?
Who do you typically work with? Before we started the recording, you were saying you work with people and sometimes one side of the couple isn't really very sure whether they, you know, this is the right route for them. Often, you know, divorces are decided by one party, for example. Do you typically work with the party that's unsure, or do you work with the party actually that you know knows where they're going and therefore has kind of got an idea of what the outcome's going to be?
I can work with either, and it's not specific to. I get often asked as well about, is this about men? Is this about women? And it's not. It's just about humans. It's about people. It's not about choosing sides or one person over another. It's being able to say, well, actually, how can we have a positive experience of divorce? Does it have to be? Conflict is a normal part of life, but it's how we manage that conflict. Is it possible to have a good divorce? And to set that up so that it's good going forwards, and that the co-parenting is set up as it needs to be, and that each party feels like perhaps they've compromised, perhaps they've made some decisions they're not fully comfortable with, but is that in the right, the best interest of the family and going forwards?
And does that trauma element manifest differently depending on whether you're the person who's made that decision or whether you're the person that, isn't very sure?
So trauma, if we think about it, it's life experiences. Life experiences can be difficult, exceedingly difficult, sometimes exceedingly damaging. And there's something about traumas, difficult things happen in life, but it's what we do inside of us that is the real pain and the real trauma. And by being able to provide people with the right support, the right environment, the right team, the right information at the right time, that's how we can help people through without the process itself being traumatic, and hopefully prevent any further trauma for the family. And maybe there's something there as well for people that as they're going through that, it raises things that perhaps if they feel safe within that process, they're able to acknowledge, and they're able to say, well, actually, this is something that's come up from my past that's now in my present, and I'd like to be able to get the right support to be able to deal with that.
I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one, but is there a typical time scale that you work with people through?
Not prescriptively. Within cognitive behaviour therapy, I'm a CBT therapist by main training, and we could say that to be able to work with anxiety, it would take between 3 to 8 sessions. For example, to work with depression and low mood may take 8 to 12 sessions, for example. In terms of changing habits, making change, lots of the neuroscience that comes out about that, 60 days at roughly 10 minutes a day to change a new habit, to create new habits. So that fits with a course of therapy, 12 sessions, 8 to 12 sessions over a period of 3 months or so. It's open-ended in terms of divorce coaching, and that's very much how I see this sort of program or community I'm establishing going forwards, because actually divorce is for life in the same way that marriage is intended to be for life. And there's various stages, depends on the age of the person or the age of the children, and that person goes through. So that support from a coaching focus, divorce coaching focus, is open-ended really, various stages that could be.
There's this greater drive towards a collaborative approach to divorce where the lawyer will perhaps bring in experts, perhaps in pensions, perhaps divorce coach, that kind of thing. How do you see your role dovetailing with the role of the family lawyer?
The family lawyer is very much in the legal expert role, and the divorce coach is not that. There's something here about being able to, who's holding the client emotionally, practically, helping them to think about what they want from the process, their longer term goals that are way beyond that process, helping them to manage the hurt and the pain that they might be experiencing that might also end up manifesting and showing itself as anger and aggression and unhealthy kind of processes. Clients will often say to me when I ask them at the end of a course of therapy or coaching, what's made the difference? And they'll say, right therapist, right time, right type of therapy. And I think there's something here about that within the divorcing context, that it's about making sure that people feel safe, they've got the right professionals, the right team around them to support them through the process at the right time with the right interventions. So divorce coaching is very much there about being able to say that it's about emotional, practical, strategic, that's non-legal, being able to demystify the process for clients, to bring in that sense of collaboration, that sense of support, that they're able to make informed decisions, that they've got some control within the process as far as possible. But also there's something there about being able to streamline it as well, so that lawyers can get on with the legal work and coaches can work with the clients on the rest of what they need.
I've heard different kind of approaches to this. I mean, at what point do you get involved with a client? And equally, what point do you like to get involved with a client? Because my understanding is that there are absolutely times when you salvage a relationship and actually divorce isn't the answer, that's what they thought the answer was, but it's not. There was something else that was going on that was blocking the relationship.
Yeah, so as a psychotherapist, I work with clients very frequently on exactly those issues. One partner has talked about separation or maybe divorce, and the other partner really doesn't want to do that. It's something there, either couples therapy that people go to, relationship coaching, maybe it's individual therapy, but there's a communication breakdown there. And again, it's that idea of, is it possible to have a good divorce if that is the decision that's going to be made? Or if communication is the problem, there's ruptures and there's repairs within relationships. And is it supporting? And even through divorce, that can be a really strong healing and learning point for people going forwards, because the relationship doesn't actually end if there are children involved. Largely, that relationship goes forward. It's just different. It's a divorced relationship. You're not married to each other anymore, but you're still in a relationship together in terms of parenting and the years ahead and co-parenting. So, if you're thinking about that, it's about overall just being able to say, right, let's create better outcomes for clients and for families. And very much fits with that sort of resolution code and the use of language and being able to the non-conflict dispute resolution.
Do you find that you come into conflict with the family lawyer at some point during that relationship?
Absolutely. Yeah. I work with lots of family lawyers, and it's something about being able to work together with that. So for me, it's about being able to support the clients feel like they've got their team, and Divorce Coach very firmly sits within that team approach that we work together.
What kind of conflicts arise, and then how do you sort of go on and resolve them? I've got images of you doing Jedi mind tricks on people, Sonya, with your CBT therapy training.
No, definitely not. It's curiosity. It's being able to say we can adjust the power dynamic to some extent by allowing clients to have the information that they need to be able to make the decisions that they need to be able to make. It is that idea that conflict is normal, and how do we communicate through that, and can we work together as a professional team to support a person so that they can actually learn a different way through that conflict that's a better way or an improved way or a different way, but a way that's more manageable for them long term.
You talked about the fact that you as the coach are doing the emotional support, you're doing that side of things that enables the lawyer to go and do their support, that enables the lawyer to go and do the legal bit. How important do you think it is that you as a divorce coach have some, not legal training, but some understanding of the process, as you say, so you can hold the hand of the client through that process? Is that kind of critical to your role, do you feel?
Yeah, very much. If a client is able to be emotionally, practically prepared, grounded, contained, they're able to regulate their nervous system and manage the emotions that go with that. I think it's really important to remember that there's an alarm system within the brain called the amygdala, and when that's triggered, it starts to impair the higher functions of decision making and being able to problem solve and to be able to remember things, and all sorts of different functions start to go offline when a person's very, very stressed and that alarm system of the brain has been triggered. So there's something there about being able to say that actually we're being able to support that client to be grounded, anchored, so that they can actually make the decisions they need to make.
Where, in your view, is the line between the emotional support that the lawyer provides and your role? And I don't want to labour this point particularly, but the lawyer typically takes on a huge burden, don't they, with the client, or can often take on a huge burden with the client.
Absolutely. And that empathy is really appropriate. That understanding is really appropriate. That relationship between lawyer and client is really, really important. But there's an element there of emotions because of the inevitable pain of something ending and separating and needing to move through that, that perhaps isn't the lawyer's role. This is where the coaching and therapeutic coaching, if you like, can come in, and that combination of psychology, neuroscience, practical application of those things comes in to be able to support the client so that they've got a separate space to the legal space to be able to work through the things that they need to be able to think about, to say that they might not be able to say to anybody else that's in their life at that moment because it wouldn't be appropriate for whatever reason. Being able to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, but also to be able to have that toolbox approach to the situation that they're in, because as we know, for most people it isn't just a couple of months, it could go on for a couple of years in some cases, and it's being able to support somebody to develop that resilience, and through each stage of that there's something else that might be coming up for them.
And similarly, do you see that you have a role in supporting the lawyer, for example? How can we better prepare practitioners for the emotional impact of their roles? Because I think that's probably something that they don't particularly get through their training, for example.
I think it's really important. Maybe there is something about additional training. Maybe it is something about law firms being comfortable with bringing in people like me to deliver training on trauma-informed approaches so that people can understand. One of the things clients so often will tell me is understanding the neuroscience behind it, understanding the neurobiology behind it, of how my brain works. And that happens, anxiety is triggered in 0.03 of a second. It's not just about how we're perceiving something, it's neuroception, how the brain's actually perceiving something. And when clients are able to understand that, they're able to have that revelation of, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that my brain is doing this, but I do have a responsibility to be able to manage this going forwards. It's not my fault that these things might be triggered for me because of whatever that might be my past or my present. But I do have a responsibility of how I present this to the world, or I manage this within the world and my family and anything else. So for lawyers, how can there's human content, isn't there, that perhaps isn't spoken about so much. You're learning the law, but you're not necessarily learning, maybe you are, but the experience of being human within that, working with other humans who are in a great deal of pain. How do you carry that or hold that, or do you need to? And perhaps that's where some of the new approaches are coming in within family law, to be able to take the potential for trauma, vicarious trauma, burnout, the cognitive load, the emotional load of all of those things, so that we can, perhaps it's the idea that if you needed to understand more about pensions, you'd contact a pensions specialist or a taxation specialist. And perhaps that's where traditionally it might have been thought about as couples therapist or a individual psychotherapist, but there's something there perhaps about also coaching, because slowing the process down isn't always possible when people have got different agendas, and coaching can work in a different way that hopefully can support clients through that, and lawyers.
You've done quite a bit of coaching yourself generally, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been really important to me to work with clients in a way that supports them, so that CBT is perceived very often, cognitive behaviour therapy is being perceived as a short-term therapy. And the reason why it's short-term is because we want our clients to become their own therapists. We want our clients to feel like they've got a toolbox and they're able to be their own therapist going forward. And CBT is a way of life, not just a treatment approach. And I think that was a real moment for me when I did my family mediation training and then called my own lawyer and said, what shall I do about this? And she said, but Sonya, you can do that. And I realised that actually that's where the parallel sits within CBT and divorce coaching, that we're able to actually take the mystery and the power dynamic and equalize that somewhat for clients, so that they feel like they have got really key information that they need to be able to go forwards, which is why I've set up the divorce coaching program and this part of my business with lots of training courses, lots of information for people, and access to one-to-one support and group support. So and also so they don't feel alone. There's lots of isolation within this. When I speak to clients, very often they don't know who they can talk to. There's a sense of failure or stigma, and they need to work through that. So that's again where the coaching program comes in, that they're able to come into this and feel like they've got a safe place where they can be and start to work through these things.
Just to revisit a little bit of what you said about your role and how you support people, and particularly picking up on that trigger response that you mentioned, 0 0.3 seconds. How much is that response informed by nature, and how much is it informed by nurture? And we may very well not have enough time in a podcast to go into that in a huge amount of detail, but different people will react in different ways, won't they?
We could spend days talking about that. There's a huge area of research growth and knowledge base growth within this, but the body holds the score. So our body, trauma can be laid down at a cellular level. It can be intergenerational. It can be triggered by a smell, a sound, a smile. All of those things can be potential triggers. They can be the most subtle things, a slight movement, the slightest thing. So I think it is a huge area to talk about, but when we're working with trauma therapy, we're very much working on emotional regulation, stabilization phase, really being able to help people to have really strong grounding, anchoring techniques, that they're able to, that stabilization is absolutely key, so that you're in that window of tolerance, if you like, within perhaps the divorce framework. You are going to be in difficult situations, but it's also something about being able to get your needs met. What are your needs? And that's, again, a huge question. You know, we can go with the Instagram view that I just need a nice hot bath with candles, or I need that view of the cabin overlooking the lake or something. That's what I need. But actually, you know, it's a huge question that covers so many areas, so many domains, and that could be multiple sessions just in itself, just to understand. It's a question I quite often will ask clients: what's the wisest, kindest thing for you at this moment? What's the wisest, kindest thing for the people around you at this moment? And how often do we actually really ask ourselves that, you know, what's the kindest thing and the wisest thing? And we have the emotional brain, we have the cognitive brain, but within that, somewhere in the middle, there's a wise brain where those two things overlap. And that's where we really want clients to be when they're in the middle of a divorce or separation, legal processes, so that they can make the best decisions they possibly can with the information they've got at the time.
That feels as though it's a good place to stop this part of the discussion. And at some point in the future, Sonya, absolutely no doubt it would be well worth having you back on to discuss some of the other bits that we might have sort of gone over quite quickly in the course of the conversation. There's no way that we're going to do this topic justice over a 25-minute podcast, but it's been great to have you on, and I really appreciate you joining and sharing your experience and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Thank you.
The Today's Family Lawyer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on today'sfamilylawyer.co.uk. My thanks to Sonya. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at today'sfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.